Silence pierces deeper than any blade, which is why the knife they never touched still drew blood. Hear me clearly, my darling chosen ones. Cowards have long used silence as a weapon. Silence is dangerous, despite what the opponent would have you believe. Absence is not silence. It's a recommendation. It's not a blank area. It's a decision. And you live by that judgment, selected ones. As individuals and whole rooms turned their heads away, you could feel the weight bearing down on your chest. They were aware. It was verified by every sneer, every murmur, and every uncomfortable look. They saw your treatment. However, they crumpled like paper in the rain when it came time to rise and speak even a single word. They were still able to speak. They decided not to make use of it, and they will bear that decision for a lot longer than the wounds they inflicted on you. Consider it. When it came to your dignity, these same folks who can argue pointlessly over gossip till midnight and yell their heads out about sports suddenly became silent. Isn't that ironic? They were able to recall song lyrics, scandals, and statistics verbatim, yet they were unable to string 3 words together. That is incorrect. Silence wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a calculation. They left you unprotected while they weighed, measured, and protected themselves. Perhaps you've also wondered, why didn't they help me? Did I not deserve it? I'll respond to it for you. You were valuable. You have always been valuable. However, their quiet had nothing to do with your value. It has to do with their dread. When the fire is on someone else, people love to be safe. They narrated tales to themselves. I have no place there. There will be another speaker. I'd best not get involved. In their hearts, however, they were not impartial spectators. They actively took part in the betrayal of you. The deception that your agony was tolerable was reinforced each time they remained silent. This is the part they didn't anticipate. They should have been buried by their silence, but instead they were made public, revealed the weaknesses in their bravery, shown their moral brittleness, revealed that in order to maintain the luxury of their world, they need your pain. Because, let's face it, selected ones didn't have to bear the burden as long as you did. You turned to become their scapegoat, their buffer, and their shield. They paid for the serenity your wounds brought them by remaining silent. But pay close attention, selected ones. Being selected does not imply that life was simple. It indicates that you were the one with the strength to withstand what would have instantly broken others. While others sheltered behind cowardly umbrellas, you were the one who bore the storm. They attempted to destroy you, but you ended up becoming the clearest example of their incompetence. They detest that contradiction. Their quiet seems much louder because of your survival. I need you to stop for a second, chosen ones, before we go further. Please show your support by liking this video and subscribing to the channel if this message resonates with you and you sense the flame of truth burning within of you. That little gesture gives us the motivation to keep going and producing stuff that changes lives rather than merely taking up space. Every subscription and like takes more than a single click. It's your voice telling us, keep going. We need this. And with your help, we can keep giving you the unvarnished, energetic, transformative, and visceral realities you deserve. The guilty applaud when there is silence. Keep in mind, they were applauding your annihilation each time they remained silent. They were applauding falsehoods about injustice with standing ovations. However, they were unaware that the same quiet that betrayed you also served as a training ground for you. You developed unimaginable strength as a result of that. You grew proficient in perseverance while others hid behind excuses. You developed the ability to breathe under pressure, but they avoided discomfort. They were revealing their reliance on your demise, even if they believed they were defending themselves. Don't let them sell you that excuse. What if they truly didn't know what to say, you may ask? People are always able to protect their interests. They find words quickly enough when it comes to their reputation, their family, or their profession. They battle tooth and nail, write letters, and compose speeches. However, they abruptly ran out of things to say when it was you. That should not be seen as confused. Type amen to embrace the angel's blessings. Show your support by giving super thanks up to $20. It was a choice to choose their comfort above your suffering. This is when the roles are reversed. They believe that their silence deprives you of authority. They thought you wouldn't be believed. They thought you would shatter gently, vanish, and simplify their lives. However, the one factor they failed to take into consideration was your perseverance, selected ones. Every day you continued to stand and didn't give up. Their quiet turned into an admission. Because surviving something that could have destroyed someone doesn't just show how strong they are. It exposes the weaknesses of everyone else. In a metaphorical sense, you turned into the mirror they were unable to gaze into. Their cowardice was evident in your survival. Their emptiness was brought to light by your wounds. Their lack of courage was highlighted by your fortitude. They looked away for that reason. They saw too much truth about themselves, not because they didn't see. You can tell who is really with you when you stand by yourself. That's what you saw in quiet. Selected ones. It eliminated illusions. It exposed those who wagered against your survival, those who made fun of your pain, and those who laughed at it. However, their giggling was brief, since nothing makes a gathering more uneasy than when the individual they were expecting to break continues getting up. You ended up interrupting their story. They practiced the finale in whispers, and you changed it. Your entire presence today serves as evidence that truth cannot be obliterated by silence. Allow this to pierce your soul. Your frailty was never the reason for their quiet. It had to do with their boundaries. It had to do with the price they refused to pay, the solace they were unwilling to part with, the reality that they lacked the courage to face. Silence, they believed, was their defense. However, it gave them a brand. They believed you were buried, yet you were crowned. And the power of being selected is that chosen one. You reveal the quiet rather than just surviving it. You transform what was supposed to break you into the most audible demonstration of your might. And I'm grateful. Yes, you, the ones that were selected. Your presence is what sustains our movement, regardless of whether you are new to us or have been here with us through all the harsh realities. If this affects you, provide your assistance. If you're taking control of your loneliness and using it to your advantage, press like, subscribe, and leave a remark with a score of 77. Give the video to someone who should see it. That is genuine assistance. It's not a little click. It continues us producing daring, transformative material that supports the courageous and breaks the quiet. Let's get started step by step. Every sentence here will seem like a map of your journey, I promise, if you are actually selected. Let's begin. First, being silent does not equate to innocence. A treachery contract has been signed. Being silent is not neutral. A treachery contract has been signed. Your silence wasn't a coincidence. The page of their crime has your signature. Listen, my beloved selected ones. Be aware of this when they claim not to have known. The comfortable use such phrase in an attempt to gain moral approval for themselves. They witnessed it. They heard it. Every time you enter a room, they sense the electric unease. When you needed them most, the phrases that came out of their lips vanished. That hesitancy, confusion wasn't the problem. It was a computation. There was more to their stillness than nothing. They intentionally placed a boundary between you and their security. They didn't just let you down. They made the decision to keep things going. Additionally, that decision has a signature. Was I asking too much? Did I expect a miracle number? You may be wondering, yet in most cases, a human gesture was plenty. One glance, one statement, and one refusal to fall for the deception. Imagine a trial in which the accused rewrites history while all witnesses remain silent. Their living room turned like that. People are hardly impartial observers when they remain silent in the face of damage. They are the outcome's silent engineers. The framework that permitted the damage to continue was constructed by silence. The scene was established by silence. The abuser was able to behave without repercussions because of the silence. And remember, selected ones, that power comes from permission. Let's now deconstruct their justifications. I had no idea what to do. When it comes to their values, people always know what to do. They quickly find a voice when their reputation, income, or seats are under jeopardy. They will call meetings, send emails, and beg for answers, but not on your behalf. The justification is prepared and practiced for you. It's not easy. I'd rather not get involved. Translation: I value my seat more than your honor. I was terrified. I won't pretend that fear isn't genuine. But fearlessness is not the same as bravery. It's the decision to take action anyway. In actuality, those who say they are afraid also appear when the dangers are lower. A daring position on something that doesn't jeopardize their comfort, a dangerous social media view. Type amen to embrace the angel's blessings. Show your support by giving super thanks up to $20. After calculating the costs, they concluded that the danger was outweighed by your suffering. That isn't confusion. It's a moral judgment. I tried to help quietly. Okay, some will murmur. Public opposition is not the same as covert sympathy. Only when those doors are utilized to halt the damage can quiet solace behind the matter. Comfort and private solace are nothing more than a velvet robe concealing culpability when they turn into the currency of inactivity. Instead of a chorus of silent apologies that vanish when the pressure gets intense, you need defenders who will raise their voices where they need to. This is where the typical query comes in handy. Why would somebody decide to keep quiet? Because the abuser is not as protected by quiet. It safeguards a comfortable network. Dinners, promotions, club memberships, and reputations are all preserved. It helps individuals avoid difficult talks that might lead to uncomfortable self-disclosures. In summary, they often choose to remain silent in order to preserve the way of life that works for them. And their decision to remain silent was really the least expensive alternative when your selected ones were pushed forward as the issue. But listen, this isn't about giving them the authority they wanted. Being selected indicates that you have the strength to bear a burden that others were unable to. Their quiet exposed them, even if it was intended to bury you. Imagine them as individuals who used invisible ink to sign a contract. The words will become clear with time. Their biography turns into their "not my problem." The footnotes are written by your survival. Imagine a courtroom where witnesses have evidence in their hands, but conceal it rather than putting it on the table. Instead of being your lifeline, that proof turns into a shield for them. The evidence is in their possession like a negotiating chip. Silence is terrible to those who are chosen. In order to protect themselves, those who could verify your veracity by phone call, message, or first-hand report instead weaponized what they possessed. They turned the truth into power. Justice also suffers when the truth is compromised. Silence may seem like a test, and it was in many respects. When no one intervened, they wanted to test whether your spine would break. They believed that by your fall, they would be excused for doing nothing. However, that exam has already been passed by you. Their math failed each time you refused to fold. Their silence became a confession because of your perseverance. You toughened where they wanted to weaken you. You asserted dignity in a place when they anticipated surrender. The alchemy of being selected is that what was intended to shatter you turns into evidence of your resilience. Please keep this in mind. Being silent is not neutral. Furthermore, it is necessary to talk. A person is taking a side when they look the other way. It's the group that makes money off of your suffering. And keep in mind that silence has its own fingerprints, even if they attempt to rewrite history to make it seem like their hands were clean. A voice is still a voice, a vote for whatever was going on in your life. Thus, let the quiet of my beloved selected ones serve as a map. Type amen to embrace the angel's blessings. Show your support by giving super thanks up to $20. Let every silent look, every word you swallow, and every discussion you steer clear of teach you who to believe and who to ignore. It's not your job to discipline them. You must continue to move. In your tale, use their betrayal pact as a witness. You won't be erased by their signature. It will demonstrate the price of your fortitude. The words will accuse them, not you, when that quiet sign sheet is read aloud one day when truth demands reckoning. Breathe now. You are stronger here even if you didn't want to be picked. Hold on to that power. The next phase is on the horizon. Second, they didn't want to spend their money on you since comfort was their currency. Their currency was comfort. They opted for the silence that preserved their lives. Their monthly rent was the source of your anguish. To ensure that their apartments would never become chilly, they paid it in quiet. Listen carefully, my lovely chosen ones. Cowardice like this wasn't an accident. It was a ledger. They examined the balance sheet and chose the side that preserved their comforts when it came down to you versus their stability. Imagine a room full of individuals who would risk a trend, a tweet, or a hot opinion for something that improves their image, but who fold like napkins when defending your dignity, may lose them a dinner invitation or ruin their weekend plans. Confusion is not what that is. It's a calculation. It's exhilarating to be comfortable. It makes individuals stingy with bravery and proficient in excuses. Early on, they learned how to safeguard the little safety nets they had created, such as parental approval, boss favors, and the cozy feeling of belonging. And they opted for the gentle solution of quiet when the truth endangered those nets. Did they not see me, you ask? Were they blind? The number. They had great vision. After calculating the costs, they concluded that they couldn't afford to lose your life. Consider how many times you were the one carrying the turmoil, while others were gathering the remnants of harmony. In order to keep them dry throughout the storm, you served as a human barrier. Their universe was level as long as you took the knocks. Removing the shield would reveal the damage. Who would want to be the next target? They remained silent because they needed what your agony provided, not because they were emotionless. Convenience, calmness, and continuity. They used their silence as a self-preservation tactic. This is the ruthless math. The majority of individuals see morality as a business. They balance the personal cost of remaining silent against the societal cost of speaking. Will I lose my network, my career, and my place at the table? Due to the temporary protection of quiet, the math often works in favor of it. However, such security is not free. It was purchased using your account. It turns you into a throwaway commodity. And it is a betrayal of that type that cuts deeply. They didn't despise you. It's because you interfered with their desired way of life. The issue shifts from why they didn't help to what their life meant, if not loyalty, when you find they put comfort above you. The response is intense and illuminating. For them, your humanity was less important than their existence at that very time. Later on, they'll attempt to frame it in lofty terms. I was defending my family. I had obligations. I did not want to create a commotion. Don't be fooled by the silken words, however. Protection is not protection that necessitates the injury of another. It's a deal. When responsibility is used as an excuse for cowardice, it won't protect you. To fall asleep at night, they will tell themselves tales, but the ledger remains unchanged. Their decision was shown by the comfort they accumulated. They believed that keeping quiet protected their reputation. Rather, it weakened it. The exact thing that marks them will gradually erode the barrier they created out of your suffering. Does that mean I was only a stray cost to them? I understand what you're thinking, but the answer is no. You are never just collateral, chosen ones. Being selected indicates that you have the strength to endure what others were unable to. Your value was not diminished by their failure to stand. Theirs was marked. You weren't weaker because of your endurance. It exposed their lack of bravery. And all of this is dangerously ironic. The conveniences they protected are fleeting. Popularity wanes, occupations shift, and tables shift. They created fragile, little empires on your pain. What will they have left when that convenience falls apart? Just a history of decisions that are difficult to forgive. Because guilt never goes away. It is a compound. Therefore, use this as a weapon and a lesson. It was never by coincidence that they were comfortable. It was a decision. Allow that information to liberate you from self-loathing concerns and focus your efforts on creating a life independent of the cowardice of others. Maintain your composure. Be the one to speak out when the truth needs to be heard. Because you are forged for these times if you are selected. You will remain standing while they calculate the cost of their quiet as their comforts disintegrate. Breathe now, those who have been selected. It's the next truth. Third, the audience wasn't still. They were calculating your anguish. The throng was not defenseless. The math was being done by them. Their silence should not be interpreted as astonishment. Your dignity was classified as an acceptable loss on a ledger that was being balanced. Hear this clearly, my lovely chosen ones. Human weakness was not the cause of the scene you recall. Small judgments were made in the boardroom under the appearance of inactivity. Your surroundings weren't taken by surprise. Their numbers were running. If I talk, who benefits? If I don't, who loses? What am I willing to give up for the truth? Additionally, your name was the less expensive line item when the totals were in. When they refuse to do anything, they are hiding behind that calculating, clinical, cold, and cruel persona. Did they really know? Were they really thinking that deeply? Is a question you can ask yourself when you relive that moment. When reputation, comfort, and benefit are at stake, ordinary situations become into moral accounting. Observe the speed with which the chorus finds a voice when it suits them. To show allegiance to authority, to protect a bargain, or to support colleague. When the stakes are on their shoulders, people don't just start being brave. When action is recommended by the cost-benefit analysis, courage shows up on schedule. According to the estimate, quiet was less expensive for you. Silence prevailed. This is the section that hurts the most because it substitutes condemnation for sympathy. Forgiving someone who panics is simpler than forgiving someone who intends to remain in one place. Anxiety is a human weakness. Making a calculation is a moral decision. A few of them even set up shop to take advantage of your fall. Partnerships, promotions, and the opportunity to fill a position left empty by your departure. Others struck discreet agreements. If you keep me safe, I'll ignore it. Bravery wasn't the foundation of the ladder they climbed. It was built out of your suffering. Furthermore, don't believe anybody who claims that the crowd was uniform. No, it wasn't. Similar math, different looks. They all performed the same equation. The risk-averse, the opportunists, the busy, and the exhausted. Silence has the same value as money. Spending collectively buys disaster for one and comfort for many. That is its nasty economy. Injustice ceases to seem like an emergency and begins to feel like policy when it benefits a certain group. Couldn't a single voice have made a difference, you ask? Yes, sometimes no. However, what many fail to realize is that the expense of being the only dentist was included into the crowd's estimate. Racism, harm to one's reputation, and being called a troublemaker. Therefore, societal incentives dictated the response. The societal cost was considered and rejected, not that no one was capable. Because of this, the quiet is deliberate rather than coincidental. This is what their math fails to account for. They thought they were shielded by their calculation. They believed they would be secure if they avoided a conflict. However, safety acquired at the expense of another person's pain is fragile. It breaks. The pressure that exposed those fichissures was your selected ones. Your survival and defiance of erasure reveal how naive the crowd's algebra was. They underestimated the human cost. They gave up their moral future in an attempt to hold on to their now. What do you do with such information then? Stop looking for justifications in their faces first. They were not incompetent. They weren't willing. Quit spending your time pondering whether they were cowards or courageous. Call it what it was, a decision. Second, use that decision as a guide. Leave a room if it prioritizes convenience above justice. Avoid looking for affirmation there if someone values appearances more than responsibility. You can identify who they are by their calculation. You can identify who belongs in your group by your clarity. Think of a tidal chart as a metaphor. You were left stranded when they pulled boats away from the coast after reading the low tides. To prevent waves, they timed their silence. However, things change. When the water changes, what once seemed to be a defensive strategy turns out to be proof of their poor decision-making. The storm that exposes their makeshift shelters is your perseverance. Keep in mind that the calculus of the audience was never unbiased. People get into a complicit contract when they weigh your worth against their comfort level and decide to go with the latter. Long after you restore, they will be haunted by the ledger they maintain. Stories, promotions, and reputations all bear witness to their silence. In the light of your truth, those entries will eventually be read. Let their math serve as your evidence, selected ones. They weighed and calculated, added and subtracted, and the outcome revealed their true selves. Make use of that insight to hone your limits. Choose friends whose calculations respect your dignity, and proceed with the clarity of someone who has seen the equation and will never again participate. The next phase is on the horizon. Remain with me. Fourth, the evidence in their possession turned into a weapon that stabbed you twice. Instead of using evidence as help, they turned it into armor by hoarding the facts. The people who held onto the receipts had no intention of clearing your record. They intended to protect their own. This is the bit that burns, my darling chosen ones. You weren't given a ladder by the folks who might have rescued you from the fire. They constructed a wall. They had the chats that were preserved, the screenshots, the videos, and the mails that documented everything. Those are not neutral files. They were choices. They could have saved lives. Rather, they were reprogrammed into silent preservation tools, bargaining chips, and defensive systems. Imagine someone selecting which frames to display from a camera roll of your worst moment in order to save their seat at the table rather than to expose the truth. That choice is deliberate and icy. What hurts isn't the lack of information. It's the existence of evidence and the choice to ignore it. Why would anyone do that? Why hold the truth hostage? You may wonder, and the answer is awful in its self-preservation, ease, and simplicity. Evidence puts their cozy script in jeopardy. Loyalty would be put to the test, reputations would be jeopardized, relationships would splinter, and chances would vanish if the truth were made public. Thus, the portions that are inconvenient are tucked away. They leak a clip here, a statement there, just enough to divert attention, cloud the issue, and paint the victim as untrustworthy or untidy. Proof becomes a weapon in this way, employed to manage the story, the timing, and who survives it undamaged, not to reveal wrongdoing. I'll be direct. A person's silence conveys purpose when they accumulate evidence and sit on it. It says, I saw, I know, I'm choosing comfort over consequence. They'll tell themselves stories to sleep at night. We'll handle it later. It's complicated. Someone else should do it. But those narratives are post-rationalizations. The calculus was made before the stories were written. They weighed the cost of truth and decided your justice was more expensive than their peace. That's not prudence. It's complicity. This betrayal changes the rules of trust. You learn the hard way that documents, recordings, and eyewitness accounts are only as safe as the hands that hold them. Witnesses who could corroborate your story become gatekeepers instead of allies. Proof that could topple lies is repurposed as leverage, a bargaining chip in backroom deals and soft negotiations. They leak fragments to steer suspicion and keep you destabilized. They hold the rest until it serves their interests. Your credibility unravels, not only because of the original harm, but because those with evidence chose silence over accountability. And the psychological cruelty here is unique. Not only were you harmed, you were betrayed by the record keepers themselves. The people who could have validated your pain became the ones who optimized for their comfort, turning accountability into a currency. That creates a chilling question you now must answer for yourself. Who do you risk everything for? Who will actually hold the truth with you instead of wielding it against you? When the very holders of proof opt for preservation over justice, your options narrow and the cost of speaking grows. Still, chosen ones, there's a hard irony. The shields they raise to protect themselves are stamped with their names. Time and pressure reveal the seams. Paper and pixels are durable only until someone demands transparency. The same records they buried to keep the lie standing will in time testify against those who hid them. The strategy of hoarding proof is a short-term defense with long-term consequences. Their preservation will age into exposure. Their bargaining chips will become evidence of a bargain made to sacrifice you. Hold this truth as armor. They chose to protect their comfort, and in doing so they exposed their values. You didn't lose because they hid the proof. You learned who they were. Your survival rewrites power dynamics. Those files, those clips, those saved messages. One day, they won't be tools of preservation for the selfish. They'll be the ledger of complicity they can't erase. Until then, chosen ones, keep your story. Gather your witnesses, document what you can, and know this. The hoarders of truth bought themselves shelter for a season, but they signed that shelter with their own betrayal. The record will remember. The world will see. Your endurance will be the final evidence. Number 5, they didn't wait for your healing. They waited for your collapse. Some of them bought front row tickets to your collapse. They clapped at every stumble and wrote the obituary of your future before you even caught your breath. My dear chosen ones, listen. Their silence was never neutral. It carried an agenda. They didn't simply avoid the fight because they were unsure. They waited. They placed bets with their eyes, counting down the moments until your spirit would give way. Imagine a crowd at a theater, not for a healing miracle, but for the spectacle of your ruin. Popcorn in hand, commentary ready, tuned to watch you fail. That image isn't cruel by accident. It reveals a motive. Collapse would have justified their whispers, their gossip, their small, smug judgments. Your breaking would let them sleep easier, tell their stories with less guilt, and keep their private hierarchies intact. They needed your defeat to confirm their version of normal. You might wonder, is that really possible? Could people really root for my undoing? Yes. People are very good at making suffering into proof. If your fall happens, they point and say, see, that's who they are. Their tale, the one that gave them a sense of security, falters if you cure them. Some people use your suffering as a scorecard. Every setback serves as proof that their judgments were accurate. They sat in quiet for that reason. They didn't want you to get well. They were awaiting confirmation. Who stands to gain from your downfall? You ask. If you vanish from the race of life, who gets to seem smarter, safer, or better? The responses are illuminating. Some individuals emotionally benefit from your little size. Maintaining a role that they may mock or reject is essential to their identity, pride, and social capital. Your healing poses a danger to them. Accountability, uncomfortable talks, and perhaps a rebalancing of power or attention would all be necessary for healing. The spectators pay a high price for it. Thus, they went with the less expensive choice. Silently applaud the breakdown. This hurts because it indicates that your endurance poses a danger to them, rather than merely being inconvenient. You stole the ending they secretly practiced from their screenplay each time you refused to break. There's always a yearning for closure in their head shakes, smirks, whispered stories, and wells. They didn't get that pristine arc because of your survival. You turned into the oddity they couldn't comprehend. A survivor in spite of the odds. Someone who declined to be the warning story. Additionally, you degraded their expectation of control by refusing. That embarrassment becomes bitterness, and the ensuing quiet is fueled by bitterness. Was I supposed to perform my pain for them? You may wonder, but the answer is no. However, realize that it is not your fault that they expected you to fail. They use it as a tool. Every encounter is shaped by it. Therefore, be prepared for suffering from those who wanted you to remain broken as you begin to mend. They will attempt to classify your recuperation under outdated headings. They will mutter that you've changed, that something must have gone wrong with you. It's projection. They are still correct, notwithstanding your recovery. They are less at ease as a result. This is the power twist, however, selected ones. Their vulnerability came from waiting for you to fall. They thought you would fail in silence. Rather, you grew, rebuilt, and learned. They planned their comments and practiced sympathy, but what they got was your fortitude. Their writing stumbled each time you got up. What they believed to be evidence of your purported shortcomings turned out to be evidence of their own moral depravity. They were not shielded by their expectant stillness. They were marked by it. Hold on to it. Instead of poison, let it be fuel. They missed out on the cheap joy of being correct because you wouldn't give them a show. They're not doing you a favor by curing you. Reclamation is what it is. You don't recover to get even with the onlookers. To regain your life, you must heal. However, each advancement also modifies the history of who watched and who waited in silence. When everything is said and done, keep in mind that your fortitude will surpass their indifference. Your recuperation will serve as proof of their insignificance. The purest form of justice is that. Breathe now, those who have been selected. Continue. The veil will be drawn back even further with the following revelation. Sixth, your suffering was transformed into their amusement. Their prime time was your suffering. They purchased front row tickets and transformed your life into a performance. Listen, my beloved selected ones. What was done to you wasn't simply disregarded by them. They turned it into a show. Your anguish turned into the show people watch for their own delights. They circulated the late-night tale as a joke. They kept playing the gif until your wound seemed to be amusing. That harshness isn't an accident. It is a purposeful destructive change. Somewhere along the way, your suffering became marketable, snackable, shareable, and content rather than someone else's hurt. And empathy dies when that switch switches. It is replaced with spectacle. Why would somebody do that? You may wonder. How is it possible for anybody to find humor in my situation? The solution is straightforward but unsightly. People create comfort when they reject responsibility. Making fun of you reduces the moral separation between crime and witness. Laughter is an escape route. The pain of seeing injustice and doing nothing is lessened by a private joke. They escape the embarrassment of involvement by making you the story twist. Their rumors serve as armor. Consider how this works in real life. If they can turn your suffering into a narrative, they won't ever need to respond to the question, "Could I have stopped it?" The first murmur sows the seeds of a story. Here, exaggerated detail. Leave it out of the context. Add a humorous tune. Discussions change with time. Facts turn into flavorings that are added for impact. Soon, a dozen others are embellishing the same narrative to maintain a social ritual rather than to expose the truth. Your life becomes into source material, a currency that aligns clicks, buys attention, and indicates who is aware of the truth. The math is terrifying. For others, your breakdown is a source of social capital. They see intervention as dangerous because of this. Losing influence is the result of ending the program. It entails posing a danger to reputations, changing relationships, and raising awkward questions. Instead than correcting the record, many would want to maintain the show. It's simpler to nod while lowering their consciousness, to grin, and to share the story. You can be certain that they will earn money off of it if there's a market for it, clicks, likes, or whispered stories that elevate someone. It's always been scandal. Your suffering turns become a product, which alters how you're treated by others. More headline, less human. Let's be honest. This is more than simply malicious rumors. It has to do with power relations. A friendship is formed via shared disdain. A gang uses cruelty to gain trust when they share tales at your expense. They produce both insiders and outsiders, and the circle is sealed by your suffering. The strength of that social connection is greater than most people realize. Because of this, a cruel joke at a party may be more harmful than a bully's push in the corridor, because others see and approve of the humor. Everyone in the room chuckles. Shame spreads. You turn into the warning story that puts the others at ease. Does my recovery ruin their entertainment? You ask. The answer is yes, and that's exactly what it's about. You take away their hobby when you refuse to play the part of the victim forever. They are forced to acknowledge that they were onlookers who supported a falsehood as a result of your recovery. Their social currency is essentially devalued by your tenacity. Their amusing tale is suddenly shown to be cowardly. The cohesiveness of those who relied on your downfall is lost. Since there is no longer any fundamental material, your pain, for them to take advantage of, their shared joke falls apart. So, selected ones, how do you handle this truth? Name the offense first. Draw attention to the fact that it is exploitation. Don't accept your life as satisfactory. Keep your story safe. Choose the person who will tell it. Second, instead of using their laughter as evidence, use it as proof. They were confessing when they laughed. It was evident who valued spectacle above justice. That map is invaluable. It helps you avoid disappointments in the future and identifies your friends and opponents. Lastly, keep in mind that their use of you as entertainment was never an indication of your failure, but rather of their poverty. Because they lack depth, those who devour suffering for sport are very shallow and need drama. Their chit-chat will be outlasted by your recuperation. The message will be your life. The aftertaste will be their jokes. Keep in mind, your recovery is more than simply a personal one. The show gets destroyed by it, and the truth becomes louder as their audience gets less. Breathe now, those who have been selected. The stage is visible to you. The script is familiar to you. Walking off it and writing your own lines is the next step. The seventh piece of armor they wore was uncertainty. Disbelief in the weapon they choose. They erected a doubt wall. They wagered that no one would ever believe you. You weren't just silenced. They practiced the falsehood that would permanently silence you.